talked about last week how you look at yourself, and when you have a selfless model, you think that a certain righteousness exists when you ignore yourself for the benefit of the other. The more you deny yourself, the more in that model you perceive yourself to have a certain level of ethics, of righteousness. We defined ethics in that model based upon selflessness. What I introduced last week was the fact that the Torah has a little bit of a different model. In fact, I think a strongly different model. And we mentioned the fact of Chayecha Kodem, your life comes first, that really you start with self. And the point is your life has first. That's because we are defined as creatures of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and servants of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ovdei Hashem. And therefore, really what occurs is that you have to look at yourself as having a mission and having a responsibility. So when you have certain resources and so forth, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you those resources to accomplish your mission, and that's your first directive. That's your prime directive. You have to accomplish your mission. So when we say Chayecha Kodem, in terms of the classic example of the desert, one bottle of water, you have it, and you don't and you don't share it with another person, because if you share it, you both die. What happens is that you have to see yourself as you both are creatures of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not of myself. It's not It's not like we are both have this view of ourselves as creations of God. Then we're equal. All creations of God are equal. All human creations. I'm not going to get into evaluating, I'm just going to say that there's an equality. So the point is that when you have that bottle of water, you have to say, yes, but my first responsibility is to fulfill my mission. And my mission is to continue. So therefore, this water is with me. I have to use it for my mission. Only in that regard, when I actually put it in that way, then Chayecha Kodem, my life is first. And then I can think in terms of assisting other people with their mission in life, which is really what we are talking about when we think in terms of communal responsibility.
How do you determine that your mission is to continue? Seems self-serving.
It's true. It is self-serving. The fact is because the point is, Kodesh Baruch Hu, as long as you're alive, you are responsible for that mission. Because that's where halacha comes into it. Halacha is the guideline for understanding your mission. Therefore, in every situation, you have to say, okay, they're my mission. So the starting point over there is to say that, listen, your mission is to continue on. Now, it gets a little bit more difficult when you think in terms of, well, the other person is, the leader of the Jewish people. Maybe I should recognize that I'm irrelevant in that person. The truth is that gets into a real interesting debate in terms of how we evaluate situations. That's the end of the Gemara in Hurrius, and it really becomes difficult because there are different criteria that we use. Sometimes the criteria is first come, first serve. Everyone's equal. Like, for example, when we used to have dialysis machines in hospitals versus now they take them home and so forth and so forth. But when we used to have machines, not everyone could get to the machine. So how do you make the decision to get to the machine? That was a major ethical policy decision. There are, in that kind of situation, there seems to be 3 different criteria that are applied. Okay, and in applying those criteria, every situation applying these criteria is somewhat different. There is the Gemara Hurrius talks about pecking order, like, for example, for pigeon shruim, for redeeming someone. Okay, there is actually a concept of melech and kohen and stuff like that. There is a social order in terms of who do you pota first if you only have a limited amount of funds and you can't be pota everyone. That's one example. Who do you save first? Like the classic example, everyone tells the example. Your father and your Rabbi are both drowning in the river. Who do you save first? Your Rabbi is your Rabbi Muvhak, Yes, Mufak means he's the one you learned most of your Torah from. You don't really have them anymore like that. But the fact is that he actually goes even ahead of your father. But then people say unless your father's a Talmid Chacham, then you have to go. I mean, the fact is there's different criteria. But one of the criteria is first come, first serve. And there's disagreements between these various criteria. Okay, you have to know when do you apply this, when do you apply that. One is family. Okay, gave the father father. Sometimes, family comes first. Like we're going to see in Hilchos Tzedakah, that family comes first in Hilchos Tzedakah. The point is that in any aspect of these issues, there's concepts of pecking order. But chayecha kodem, your life is first. So, for example, in Hashavas Veda, returning a lost article, okay, you've lost something, and even your father has lost something. Okay, so the fact is that you lost something, you can go get your own lost article first. Okay, because you're first. Your mission is first. And that's what we're going to have to develop in the sense of, really, I'm trying to develop this idea that it comes from a recognition that you are a servant of God, a creature of God. Everyone's equal in that idea, and therefore we have to balance this out. And really, what I'm coming down to is you have to see your life as having a mission. One of the key points about our perception of life is that we have a purpose. Okay, life is not just how you get by until you have a future world or whatever. You're not just taking up space until you get to the. That's where I really want to be. This is just a waste of time. This is a world that of development, growth. You have things to do in this world. Okay, that's really what I'm trying to develop from this idea that when we talk about a person and you say your life is first, you have to look at it and say, hey, because I have purpose. Okay, and that's really where the ethical standards of Judaism begin to take a difference. In most ethical standards, they always talk in terms of self and selfless, right? Everything else is, whatever goes. You know what I mean? But the point is that when you talk about a good person, it's talking about a person who gives, right? That's generally what most people think in terms of a good person. In our perspective, we have a much more complex and fuller understanding of what a good person is. A scholar is an example of self-development. And I mentioned this also, I think last week I mentioned the Gra is noted for saying there are three types of mitzvot. Ben Adam l'chavero, between man and man. Ben Adam l'makom, between man and God, and Ben Adam la'atzmo. And it really defines the three areas of our religious development. One is in our relationship to God, one is in relationship to others, and one is relationship to ourselves. We have a certain mission from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to develop ourselves. And I'm going to try and expand it a little more because that really changes your understanding of Tzedakah, or understanding of the Torah expenditure, because you recognize it's much more complex. It's much more complex, and it works with the aspect of your responsibilities to God to strive to fulfill your mission. Okay, which can include self-development, and we'll talk about the communal development and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, your first responsibility is to yourself.
Right.
But what about your child?
It grows out from there.
So you've got the one bottle of water, and you've got your little kid, and you're going to give out water.
Yeah. That actually that's extremely difficult.
But our inclination is always to do for our children.
Right.
It's our responsibility.
It's true. I'm going to talk about that in a little while. How this connects with our emotions.
Some aspect, the child is a continuation of us. It is us.
Yeah.
This is the next continuation of next door. So, by giving this child, we are looking out for ourselves.
It's still not you. There's still a division.
The way it is. That's why we have our children, to continue who we are.
Okay. The fact is that I hear the argument, but there's an aspect of that, but it's still not you. I mean, the fact is that in specific in Hilchos Talmud Torah, where there's a mitzvah on a father to teach a son. I'm not going to get into issues about mother's responsibility and also responsibility to teach a daughter It's a whole different shir. Sound like Rabbi Sullivan.
And a very long one.
Rabbi Sullivan always says that in his shir. Right? Rabbi Sullivan is someone else on kosher too, also in Nishma. Remember the Nishma circle of scholars? But the fact of the matter is, but he always says, that's another shir. But clearly fathers have a responsibility to teach Torah to their sons. But even there, the Rambam says that your learning comes first. A father has to learn first. The fact is you have to develop yourself first. Now, at some point in time, you have to say, listen, I'm working on.
But that doesn't seem like an ethical decision. That seems like a pragmatic decision.
No.
If you don't learn, you can't teach your son.
That may be true also, but it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that in terms of an ethical aspect. The truth is you're going to get into that where the balance is. There's an aspect of learning, that's also tied to teaching. The classic statements I learned most from my students. See, as you develop this model, it becomes more complex, and that's what let's.
If the two people in the desert,
Mm-hmm.
one is a person who has lived his life in a. I'm just going to use this to save time, in a worthless fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hasn't done mitzvahs, hasn't respected. In his own mind, he sees it that way. A profligate life, right? And the other person stuck in the desert with him is a person that he perceives to be of great value. Not somebody that he would have ever come in contact with in normal conditions, but this is the situation where both stranded, the airplane crashed, we're the only two left. Right? And he wants to make a decision that the one thing that will give merit to his life is preserving that person's life. Right? That's a violation of.
Seems to be.
Of Torah.
It seems to be.
And can the other person accept it in that situation?
It's problematic. You see, right. the fact is what you're touching upon is really complex issues. It seems to be that even if one person's a Talmid Chacham, like it comes up in the question of, someone says, I'll shoot you unless you shoot that person, right? Okay, so you're supposed to say, right, shoot me versus that person. Okay, what happens if the other person's a Russia and you're a tzaddik? So you're supposed to say, listen, no, kill me and let that blankety blank continue to live. Well, it gets a little bit more complicated, right? Okay, so but the fact is that on the surface.
No, but in that situation.
Yeah. Because you're being asked to actually do the act of murder.
Yeah, because you
right.
don't want to become a murderer. It doesn't have anything to do with the other guy.
Right.
Right. In this situation, you actually want to redeem a thrown away life by doing one last great act of kindness.
But who are we to judge what is a thrown away life?
I'm saying in his mind.
In his mind.
He perceives it that way.
But he doesn't know what the Almighty has planned for him and what would come out of it if he survived the desert.
What you're doing, the fact is that on the surface, it seems to be that this is the basic law. The reason it gets complicated is because of the laws of suicide. Most people understand that suicide, active, like they say, active euthanasia is awesome, right? That includes suicide or any act of killing someone in a lot of pain and suicide. Okay. There are classic examples of suicide which are praised. Shalom Melech, there's an argument whether he actually committed suicide or he got someone else to actually kill him. Right? He told someone, you should kill me because I don't want the police team to take me. Because the concern was if the police team take me, then they're going to use his body and basically the torture of his, the torturous way that he will die to further demoralize the Jewish people and so forth. So there is a concept that exists from that says basically Shaul, basically gave permission for him to die. Now, there's an argument, was that right or wrong? It's actually not so simple. Some people say it was wrong, other people say, no, in that particular case, suicide would even be okay. Why? For the purpose of not it's a din in a melech, for the purpose of saving the yam, and so forth and so forth. So that's one case of suicide. So another case of suicide, which comes up by the Gemara says that there were some young men and some young women who were being taken by ship to Rome. And what the Romans would have done with them, basically, they would have been sex slaves, to be very blunt. So what happens is the men basically jump into the sea, basically drowning themselves, and the women said, the women jumped into the sea. The women jumped into the sea rather than subject themselves to being used by the Romans. So they all jump into the women all get it and jump into the sea. The men said, if the women jump into the sea and what they're being asked to do is natural, even though it's wrong, but it's natural. What they're asking us to do is actually unnatural. For sure, we should jump into the sea. So all the men then jumped into the sea, and this is considered to be a praiseworthy act. So the point is that yields a decision. This came down to the most classic case was the famous Psak of Rabbi Tam in the time of the Crusades. When the Crusaders would come to town, right, what they do is they find the Jews, and they would kill the men, rape the women, and take the children to be baptized. Okay, an interesting mixture of values in that action, whatever. Okay, I presume that they also would have liked to baptize the women. Anyone who wanted to convert, I guess they. But if but okay, whatever it was, that's what that's what happened. So, what was started to develop in the Jewish world, Rahman Litzlan, is that when they heard the Crusaders were coming to town, what would happen is the father would take the family together, basically kill his wife and kill his children, and then kill himself. So Rabbi Tam was asked the question, what is this mutter? Is this mutter? Okay, and he basically said yes. Now there's a lot of other Rishonim who say, oh, where did he get that from? Like, what does he say? And it might be that after they already died, he wanted to be Mamet school some of these people,
right,
even though they did something wrong. There's a whole big issue. What's Rabbi Tam's spot? But on the surface, it says yes. So the fact is all these cheshbonos are subject to further investigation. So I'm not going to state categorically in these various different situations what really, given all these other aspects and so forth. But the fact is a person wants to redeem himself by saying, no, let me live, let me die, let me give my water over to this other person because it's beneficial for the world. On the surface, though, you're supposed to have a little value in yourself. Your mission is first. So because you see, it comes down to if HaKadosh Baruch Hu really wanted to save the other guy, he would have given the water to the other guy. Now, usually we don't say that, right? Like with medical things, we don't say, if you're sick, don't send someone to a doctor because this is obviously God's will that he's sick or so forth. We basically don't say that. But the truth is when you face a situation, you have to look at it and say, listen, there's something behind it. I'm basically subject to following the tzivoy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the commands of God. And that's really what halacha has to be looked at. The thing is when you're asking these questions, you're pointing out the complexity of the situation.
I find it very questionable to say that it is the command of God because I have the water. It may very well be the command of God that I do a merciful act, and that's why he gave me the water.
Well, that's where halacha comes in. Once you have a halachic statement, hayech l'kodem, that is telling you that the command of God is that your life comes first. That's what halacha is. I mean, that's where you run into difficulties in halacha, because the reason a lot of people have difficulties in halacha is because they're assuming that God's direction to them must be more personal. You know what I mean? In the sense that you have to look at every specific situation. And halacha is very broad. You know what I mean? I mean,
right.
The fact is that it's like one size fits all. right? And you would think that the directions from God have to be a little bit more um, specific and personal. So this is a challenge that comes from halachic systems. So some people, Ein Hachinami says halacha is the best thing for you 100% of the time. It's the best thing for all the individuals, 100% of the individuals, 100% of the time. That seems to be the position of some people. The Rambam, and I saw this Rambam, but I have to find the source again, but the Rambam Moreh says halacha, any legal system, is best for most of the people, most of the time. But you're still bound to follow it.
Right.
Okay? So the fact is, in any specific situation, that's where you have to make your basically say, listen, the law has, which is a broad stroke statement of ethics, applies, but the fact is that ninyav ron cheshbonos, that leads into the question of aver lishma. There's a whole
Right.
sugya in the Gemara of a sin for the sake of heaven, which really says that in this particular situation, even though the halacha is this, I'm personally deciding this like that. Now, a lot of people hold that's okay under the Noahide code. It's not okay under the Jewish code, but a lot of people hold it's okay under the Jewish code also under exceptional circumstances of this concept of Be'er Lishma. You're dealing in complex issues. When we look at the law, I mean, what we're saying, this is the statement of law, which is the basic statement. The way I look at it is I always feel that as a rabbi, my position is to state the law, to state what I think the halacha is, my determination of the halacha. That is what I believe my responsibility is. At the same point in time, I don't judge anyone, right? Because Baruch Hu judges, I don't judge anyone. And in that perspective, in terms of someone violating the halacha, with all the cheshbonos the person has and so forth, it's not up to me to judge the final din v'cheshbon that this person has before God. It's up to me just to state the law. And from understanding the statement of law, understanding that there's a concept that having this perception of a tzivui creates within us a recognition that we have responsibilities. and that's really what I'm trying to say, I think, in this whole perspective as a starting point. Although I see the challenges of that specific case, and I'm presenting a lot of issues on this and so forth, I can see challenges. But the fact is that this is the broad statement of law, and underlying it is this value consciousness that you have purpose. Now, if it was a chassid, I'd give an example of another answer. There's a famous story that many chassidim give you, that there was a king who had a servant who was very devoted to him and also always did what the king commanded. So the king was praising his servant who always followed his rules with another king. The other king said, I don't believe it. Well, let's see if it really works this way. So the king gave this servant to go to this other king with an article and said, I want you to go show it to this other king, show how wonderful it is. Whatever he offers you for it, don't sell it. Okay? So he goes there, and the other king, oh, beautiful, I'll give you $10,000 for it. The thing was worth $5,000. He said, no, I'm sorry. My king said not to get it. The king says, no, I must have it. The other king says, so I'll give you $25,000. Finally, he gets up to $250,000 for that thing. So this guy says, You know something. My king never thought they could offer $250,000 for something, $5,000. Yeah, I gotta sell it. I mean, obviously, that's what he wanted me to do. So he gave it and he sold it. So he sold it. So he comes back to the king and says, "You'll never believe what happened. You're so proud of me. $250,000 I got for it." So the king says, "Very, very nice. I made a bet with that king that you would not sell that article even for, okay, no matter what was happening, and I bet him $1,000,000. So because you sold it for $250,000, I'm out $750,000. Thank you very much." So some people say that's what it is with Baruch Hu. You don't know his cheshbonos and so forth and so forth. There's some validity to that. The problem is, in halacha, you actually do have those kind of cheshbonos that you're supposed to make at certain points in times. The fact is, halacha is not so monolithic, and there's times you're supposed to make cheshbonos like that, and you're supposed to figure these things out, and it's not as simple as we would like it to be. So it's much more complex. But what I would say is that you don't know what specific reason there is for this person to live and not for that person. On the surface, it seems like that person is objectively so much more tzaddik and a better person, so forth and so forth. What am I? You know, I'm a schwanz, and so what do I know? Of course, I should give him. And you find out that you know, you tell the story. So he went down the stream. He was I don't know, had some unique ability, and it turned out he went to a city, and they just needed someone with that ability, and because he did that, he saved the whole city. If he would have, right, if he would have saved the tzaddik, everyone would have perished. Who knows? Do you know what I'm saying? But I don't like getting, so I'm saying if there's a Hasidic person, I give that kind of answer. I don't like doing this kind of cheshbonos, but because I do know the difficulty of the law, and the fact is that sometimes the law itself does work with very specific cases. You go through a Gemara, you change one little fact, and the Gemara says, in that fact it was usher, in this situation is mutter, and so forth and so forth. You have this analysis, but the point is, and there are cheshbonos, and the situation is much more complex. But on the surface, the law seems to state that your life is first. What does it mean? It means to be selfish? No, because you have to view your life as an Eved Hashem, as someone who has a mission. So that is your responsibility. So when you have your water, you have your resources, you have to recognize that these are the resources given, to do what you have to do.
So in principle, in the example that I gave of the person who's lived a worthless life in the tzaddik, the Talmud Chacham, it means that if the person who's lived the worthless life decides to keep the water, he should then have an awareness
Absolutely.
that his life has to change.
Yeah, I would say
at that
so.
point.
Okay.
That he has to purpose
I mean,
his life.
that's what I would say is the tam behind the mitzvah.
Right.
In other words, what I'm saying is, and this is significant ethical perspective over here, and the reason it stands out is because it says this world has purpose, this life has purpose, and when you look at it that way, then you have to recognize that you then have responsibilities. And a lot of religious perceptions, the reason they don't deal with this world is because what's the point of this world? Who cares? Within our perspective, this world has value. I mean, I'll get to that for a second, because, like, for example, and therefore, your abilities to work in this world is extremely important. And for example, and that involves all your resources. So there's a statement that's found many times in Mamorei Chazal. Ani chashiv kameis. A poor person is like a dead person. Okay, the story that people most know about this is that when Esav sent his son Eliphaz to kill Yaakov, I think that's Esav's son, Eliphaz.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, and he went to go kill Yaakov, and he went and he found Yaakov on the way to Laban, and he says, "My father says I have to kill you, so I have to kill you." So Yaakov says, and Eliphaz was like, "Uncle, I don't want to kill you. I feel great about this, but Dad says I should kill you, and I don't want to not listen to my father's instructions." It was in Esau's family, Listening to father is very important. Esav is the example keeping Avim. Okay, right, but so Eliphaz has this dilemma. So Yaakov helped him out. Yaakov says, I'll tell you what, Ani chashuv k'meis, just take all my money. And then you can say I'm dead, because I'm poor, I'm dead, right? That's why they say that the reason this comes up, there's a famous question that when Yaakov comes to Lavan's house, Lavan comes and kisses him, so and unfortunately, but Joshua is that Lavan was trying to find out where the money is, because when Eliezer came to Bethuel's house, right, for Rivka, right, he was laden with gifts, right? So I mean, like, so hey, the family of Ram is known for nice presents. So here's this guy Yaakov. What? You bring nothing? He's coming from the same family. What happened? And Yitzchak was a Gvir as well. What's going on over here? So the answer is, this is what happened. Of course Yaakov left with gifts and so forth, but Eliphaz took it all because of Ani Chashuv K'meis. Okay, so that's a classic. There's a classic of Ani Chashuv K'meis. The point is, though, is what does that mean? That poor person's like a dead person. Because what is a dead person? When you look at that, a dead person is a person who can't do mitzvahs, right? You hear all about the covenant mace. In covenant mace, you don't wear your tzitzis out in front of the mace. Why? Because it's like you're mocking him. I can still do mitzvahs, and you're dead. You can't do mitzvahs anymore. What does that mean? It means that a dead person doesn't have the ability to act, right? If you are poor, and you do not have the resources to act, it's like you're dead, right? You want to do something, even fulfill the Ratzon Hashem, but you can't act, right? So the fact is that's the idea. But really, what it comes down to is that it really says that this world has purpose, and that's really what we're saying here. That the individual has purpose. Now, what is that? That purpose. That's why money becomes significant. Money becomes the way you act in this world. So part of it is the personal actions, my own personal development, and one is the communal development. Okay, and that's what we're getting into. But that's why how you spend your money, in terms of the Torah expenditure, becomes extremely significant, because what you are doing is taking action for what you want to exist in this world, and what you're responsible for existing. What is your responsibility to contribute to what should be in this world, including yourself. Okay, and that seems to be very much part of this whole model. So while there are situations of what you're dealing with, it's a matter of an ethic of understanding the value of the human being as a servant of God, as having responsibilities. There's and this goes in many different ways. I just mention this. There's a Yerushalmi. It's a famous Yerushalmi that says that one of the din b'cheshbons that we're going to be give the Kodesh Baruch Hu, one of the first questions we're asked is, did you deny yourself any pleasures? Right? So people look at that Yerushalmi and say, yes, hedonism, right for it, yeah. That's okay. So the point is did you deny yourself any pleasures? So what exactly does that Yerushalmi mean? So there's a famous story of Shimshon Hirsch. Maybe I told you the story before, of him in the Alps. When he was already older in life, he said to somebody, he said, I have to go to the Alps today. What are you doing? All of a sudden, I gotta go to the Alps. Because he went to the Alps, and then he came. I says, why was so much? He says, I'm getting on in age. I'm going to go up to Shemayim, and Kodesh Baruch Hu's going to ask me, so.
What'd you think of my Alps?
Yeah, what'd you think of my Alps? Did you like the Alps? It's beautiful. So I never went. I create a majestic sight. I'm telling you, as a Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I create a majestic sight, and you don't have the time to go and see the wonderment and be affected by it. He says, I don't want that to happen. I have to see it. So the truth is that there's that aspect of it. But the fact is, on this Yerushalmi, the Ramchal actually says something very specific. It doesn't mean hedonism. The Ramchal says it's not every pleasure. the way you have to understand Yerushalmi is pleasures that you need in order to live. And by denying that pleasure, you get so caught up in the psychological or physical effects of that denial that you're not able to fulfill your function. So the point is that, it's like classic things. If you say, I'm not going to do that, and you spend your whole time thinking about, not doing that and not really going on with it, go do it. Obviously, we're talking within halacha. We're not talking outside of halacha, right? I should say that any pleasure, halachically acceptable pleasure, right? The Yerushalmi is not trying to, say everything. It means, it's mutter for you. But the point is that if something's mutter and you're denying it, and that's taking up your psychological energy, right? And not only that, but maybe you really need it. There's a whole thing in the body now where they find out that people want to eat a certain food, and they find out that food really is what the body really needs.
Yeah.
The fact is that there's something psychologically, we really need certain things. So the point is that, because what's the point of there? Because this is the whole point of asceticism. Asceticism is worthwhile if you have a certain view of life. But if you have a view of life that says you're supposed to accomplish something in this world, right? Then you can't afford to be an ascetic. It's very interesting about Tamir Chachamim. If you speak to Tamir Chachamim, what certain people call fast days. Something happens, we'll call them fasting, right? A lot of Tamir Chachamim say don't fast, right? Unless there's certain fast days where obviously there's chiyuvim, there's certain communal fast days. There's certain fast days that Bezdin calls it a certain way you have to fast, but more tightness. But the point is that there's a general call to fast. Tamir Chachamim don't fast. Why? Because when you fast, you're not able to learn, right? You have to. I'm learning. I'm spending my time worthwhile. I'm learning. I'm going to fast, and it's going to affect my learning, right? What's the benefit of me fasting to affect my learning? It's going to negatively affect my learning. It tells you that I have to see my life as having a certain purpose. So that I think is a very important perspective, and where that develops from is then to recognize that my purpose then extends to a communal purpose. It's not just a purpose in a very narrow sense. It's a purpose in a very broad sense as well, in the sense that I have to see the aspect of community, and that's where you start seeing a difference in terms of Torah expenditure, in the sense that it's not just a matter of giving, it's a matter of what am I doing with this giving, and what am I going to accomplish with this giving. Okay, and what's the purpose of this giving? Okay, so the point is then I have to think what, and that involves what I think should be the ideal of a community and the development of a community, and then you have certain Torah rules in that regard. So it becomes much more complex because you understand that you're not just trying to have an ethical feeling or an ethical emotion. You understand that what you're trying to do actually has to have a to'elis, has to have a purpose, and that leads into another perspective in terms of our ethics. The fact that our ethics are very from a Jewish perspective, we really have an ethics. Our ethical perceptions are very much in terms of accomplishment, right? Not just simply in terms of feeling a certain sensitivity, or obviously supposed to feel other sensitivity, but in terms of accomplishment. Okay, so I guess we'll end here. I skipped through my notes, but we have to go back, and what I want to do next week is I've developed this idea of a sense of obligation. And I started with you have a mission, and I'm extending it out. You asked the question about your kid, and so forth and so forth. What then has to develop is how is it extended out? Okay, because we talked about that from a personal perception. I start with myself. It doesn't end there. There's obviously has to be an idea of chesed and so forth and so forth. That there really is the extension of self into others, which means development of community and so forth. So I want to talk a little bit how that extends out, and I also want to talk about a little bit this last concept we brought up in terms of toelis, in terms of accomplishment and everything we do, very a very perception of how we're supposed to look in terms of what we are accomplishing. It's not just a matter of my feelings in the moment. It has to be a much broader perception of where am I going with this. It really comes down to the fact that in this world we have a purpose. We really have a purpose, and in a certain way it's a nationalistic vision, but we really have a purpose in this world. It's not just simply be a nice guy and care. That's why there are reasons for existence, and we're supposed to accomplish something in life, and therefore we have to look to what we're accomplishing and developing as we move along, and the extension of our own personal responsibilities to Kodesh Baruch Hu, extended out that in two ways, in the sense that Kodesh Baruch Hu says you also have the responsibilities to assist others with their responsibilities, and you also have responsibilities to the communal, collective.